Hi, welcome to the BYU-Idaho Tutoring Center videos. Today we're going to be talking about population ecology. So first off, we need to understand what population ecology is. Basically, it's the study of populations and their interactions with each other and their environment. So what's a population? A population is any group of individuals of the same species living within the same general area. And so we need to really fast also distinguish between a population and a metapopulation. So like I said, again, a population is just a group of individuals of the same species living in the same general area, whereas a metapopulation is multiple populations that are going to have interactions with each other because they're spatially separated, but they have interactions by immigration and immigration. So when we talk about populations, we like to talk about their density and their dispersion. So density deals with the number of individuals per some unit volume, and that volume is usually determined by ecologists. And in another video, I talk a little bit more about density and how we're able to find density and calculate the number of individuals within a certain area. So if you need some practice with that, you can go watch the mark recapture video. But today we're going to focus on some other things. So dispersion is just the pattern in which the individuals of the population are spread out within their area. And so there's kind of three main patterns that we look at. The first is clumped. So in this type of pattern, we have individuals that are clumped together, and it's the most common dispersion pattern that we see. And usually what's going on here is there's some resource that a lot of the individuals in the population are all trying to share or get at because it's going to help them survive better. Other times it's because of mating. So if they're together, they're more likely to mate and be able to reproduce than if they're all spread out. And another one is with predation. Sometimes it's more beneficial to be in large groups because you can attack and prey better, or in reverse, if you're in large groups, you're less likely to be picked off than if you're alone. So that's why we see clumped kind of really common because it's beneficial for survival. Uniform is less common. It's when everything is spatially separated evenly within the area. And we see this a lot of times with things like territoriality. So different members of the population are trying to defend their area or keep their own area secluded from the other members of the population. And sometimes plants will secrete different chemicals that keep other members of the same population away so they can have their own resources and not have to be competing as much. The last one is random. Random is also less common than you would think because a lot of times we still have some sort of clump being affected. And so all the members of the population are independently situated from each other, and so they don't have any attraction or repulsion from each other. They're not making these clumps or this uniform. An example is wind-blown seeds. So if some seeds are picked up by the wind, they'll just be blown all over the place, randomly land, and start growing in a random fashion. There's really no rhyme or reason to where they're at. So that is the three dispersion patterns. Make sure you know those and some reasons why they occur, because I guarantee it's going to be on a test. And the next is demographics. So demographics is the study of a population and how they change. As we're talking about demographics, we're really concerned with birth rates and death rates. Demographics, we can look at immigration and immigration, but a lot of times we're going to be focusing on the birth and death rates because that's ultimately going to determine the population size and how it changes. And so for birth rates, we're going to be looking at females more, but we'll get into that in a second. So as far as this goes, we look at life tables, and life tables are these tables that ecologists make that track the age-specific summaries of survival. So I say age-specific because we do it in cohorts. So a cohort is just any group of individuals of the same age. So for example, if we were doing some sort of life table for humans, we would put all of the females that were born in 1997 in the same life table. We wouldn't be doing it across boards. And so we're able to track the number of survivors each year and calculate the death rates as the years go by. And so life tables are important, and you should be able to read them. They should be pretty straightforward. There should be some in your book as well. But what's even more important that you understand is survivorship curves, and that's just the physical representation of a life table or the graph that we make from a life table. And so what we'll do is we'll plot the lifespan or the age of the individual over the number of survivors. And we do this on a logarithmic scale. So I'm pretty sure you have a homework assignment that asks you to do this. So just make sure you do it on a logarithmic scale for the number of survivors, or you're going to get some funny results. And there's kind of three main patterns that can form when we plot these, and we name them type 1, 2, and 3. So type 1 is the first type I'm going to talk about, and what happens is we have a pretty flat, steady, not a lot of death happening early on. But then as we get to the older individuals, we suddenly drop down, and so we have a lot more death happening. And this type of survivorship curve is common among humans and mammals that give more parent care to the offspring. So we don't have a lot of death among the younger individuals of our population, babies and such, but as we get to older ages, then a lot of us start to die off. Then I'm going to jump to survivorship curve number 3. It's kind of the opposite. Early on we have a lot of death, and then it kind of stabilizes out towards the end. This is more common among individuals that give little or no parent care, and they produce a huge number of offspring. And so these offspring, they produce a lot of them, and a lot of them will die early on because of predation and other things and factors like that. And so a lot of insects and fish do this. They produce thousands and thousands of eggs, and only a couple will survive a very low percent onto adulthood. So that's that survivorship curve. Number 2 is kind of intermediate. We just have a steady rate of death throughout the age. We see this among lots of other organisms such as rodents and things like that. So in a test you might be asked to identify a survivorship curve, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and they either will give you a graph or they'll give you some explanation of kind of how the death rates are happening. And so this is one of the main ways we're able to identify changes in population size is these death rates. But on the flip side, we also have to be looking at the birth rates, because it's not just the death rates that changes population, it's also the number of individuals we're adding. So one way we do this is with reproductive tables. These are just another table that we make, and we plot the reproductive output of the females in the population according to their age. And so this is why we care a lot about females a lot of times when we're talking about demographics, because the females are the ones that are going to reproduce, be reproducing, and increasing our population size. And a lot of times we want to see how the age of the individual in the population affects their reproductive output. And we again do this in cohorts, and then we find kind of what age range they are the most, have the most reproductive output. And that can vary depending on the species. So I'm sure if we did one for humans, we'd see the most reproductive output anywhere from age 20 to 35 is when we see the most reproductive output for females. Now we're going to jump into life histories. So life histories looks at the schedule, or when individuals decide to reproduce, and their likelihood of survival. And so we like to answer kind of 3 questions with these life histories of when the individual is deciding to reproduce, how often they're reproducing, and how many individuals or offspring do they produce each time they decide to reproduce. And so we kind of answer look at this with semiparity and interoparity. So these are things you're definitely going to have to know and identify. Semiparity is when we have a reproduction event in a single event. So an individual will only reproduce once, they'll have a ton of offspring, and then they'll probably die, and that will be the only event. So sometimes this is called the Big Bang reproduction. Interoparity is the opposite. We have repeated reproduction. So from year to year, the individual will continue to reproduce offspring, and usually they don't reproduce nearly as many offspring in each set as the semiparity. And so sometimes it's hard to distinguish which one is which. So an easy way to remember is it sounds like iterate, which is like multiple times, which is what interoparity does. And seldom kind of sounds like seldom, which means not a lot, and so this is only one reproduction event. And these are all based on the survival of the offspring and the likelihood the adult will survive to reproduce again. So what does that even mean? Well, if the individual that is reproducing lives in an environment that's kind of unpredictable, then it's going to want to produce a lot of offspring because the environment can have different things in it that can reduce the chance of its offspring surviving. So it has lots of offspring, then they're more likely to survive and pass on the traits. And also, the individual doesn't know if it's going to be able to survive in this very unpredictable environment. So it's only going to really have one chance to reproduce, so it's going to give it all out at once. Whereas heteroparity, we have more predictable environments, so the individual has a higher chance of surviving to reproduce again, and so they only give off a couple offspring each time. And so we see also some trade-offs when we talk about these life histories. And this kind of gets back to natural selection, which you talk a lot about in your evolution unit. And basically, natural selection won't let us fashion perfect organisms. We have to kind of have some give and take compromises when it comes to these sorts of things. So it's really reproduction versus survival. And that kind of comes into play when we talk about the amount of care or parent care that the individual will give to their offspring. So it may be beneficial to give lots of parent care, but it also may not be beneficial. So for example, an individual may want to give parent care to their single offspring because that increases the chance that their single offspring will survive to reproduce and pass on the traits. However, maybe giving parent care reduces their chances, the individual's chances of surviving and reproducing again, and so they'll give limited parent care and have a lot of offspring in hopes that one of the thousands of offspring that they've produced will live to pass on the traits. So we kind of have this give and take balance of what we're going to give and sacrifice in order to try to keep our offspring alive so that we can continue to pass on our genes to the next generation. That is all for today. In another lecture videos, we're going to continue talking about different aspects of population ecology, specifically growth rates of populations, carrying capacity, R selected and K selected. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope you have a better understanding of some of these concepts. Make sure you really understand all the items that were in blue because those are the things you're most likely going to be tested on or quizzed on. Thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic day.